Well, hey there, and welcome back to Heimler's History, and furthermore, welcome to the last topic video of Unit 7 of the AP U.S. History curriculum. Now, in the last few videos, we've been talking about America's involvement in World War II, but now that the war was over, it's time to talk about post-war diplomacy, and so if you're ready to get them brain cows milked, let's get to it. So in this brief video, we're going to try to do one thing, and it is this. Explain the consequences of U.S. involvement in World War II. And truth be told, the consequences were pretty massive. The first consequence is that the United States emerged from the war as the most powerful nation on Earth, and there are a few reasons for this. The first reason is that while Europeans and Asians were busy picking up the rubble of 6 years of devastating destruction, Americans still had everything intact. With the exception of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, none of the destruction of World War II reached our shores, and that meant that while others were rebuilding, our cities and factories were already in a position to enter a period of great prosperity. Another reason the U.S. emerged from the war as a superpower is because of the critical role it played in the winning of the war. Remember that even before America entered the war, Roosevelt leveraged the full weight of our industrial capacity to aid the Allies through programs like Cash and Carry and the Lend-Lease program. Additionally, it was U.S. weapons technology, namely the atomic bombs, that ended the war in Japan. So because the United States suffered relatively little domestic destruction and because of its role in the victory of the war, it emerged as the most powerful nation on Earth. Now, what would the United States do with such power? Well, one of the most pressing issues was the effort to limit the spread of Soviet communism. Now, you might remember that when Churchill, Stalin, and Roosevelt met at the Yalta Conference just before the end of the war, they decided on a few things, like how Germany was going to be jointly occupied by the Soviets, the Americans, the British, and the French. Additionally, they agreed that Eastern European nations would have the ability to choose their leaders through free elections. But after the war was over, Stalin went ahead and claimed those Eastern European nations for the Soviet Union. He argued that those countries would act as a buffer zone between Russia and Germany should the Germans ever decide to invade again. But in doing this, he raised the hackles of the US and Britain. And so in an effort to curtail the spread of Soviet communism, the United States enacted the Marshall Plan. Now, we'll talk a lot more about the Marshall Plan in the next unit, but for now it's enough to know that this was a program through which the United States offered a buttload of money to European nations who were trying to rebuild. And the idea was that if they could rebuild and do so with their hands in the pockets of the democratic United States, then those countries would choose democratic capitalism and not Soviet communism. And actually, it worked marvelously to contain the spread of communism, on which more in the next unit. But probably the most significant consequence of the post-war diplomacy was the creation of the United Nations, which would be an international peacekeeping assembly. Now, you might remember that we tried this after World War I with the creation of the League of Nations, but it kind of failed miserably because the United States Congress wouldn't allow America to join it. And the fact that the League had no ability to enforce its resolutions didn't help either. And ultimately, you can see that the League of Nations failed because, World War II. It's like my grandpappy always used to say, if you don't sign the treaty, the next war is gonna be meaty. Thanks, grandpappy. That is indeed what happened. So the United Nations was formed in the image of the League of Nations, and its goals were similar: to prevent future wars. Except that the United Nations actually had the infrastructure to keep the peace. For example, the UN has a whole mess of peacekeeping soldiers that are supplied by member nations and whose mission is to stabilize unstable environments when they arise. Okay, now we'll have much more to say about the UN in the next unit, but for now, that's it. Okay, that's what you need to know about Unit 7, Topic 14 of the AP U.S. History curriculum. If you want to make my grandpappy happy and help yourself in the process, you can click right here and grab a review packet, which will help you get an A in your class and a 5 on your exam in May. If you want me to keep making these videos, then click right over there to subscribe. Heimler out.